Okay, so next up, very exciting opportunity. We're going to have Farshad Nowshadi, the VP eStartegy at Saman Bank, VC at level 39, FinTech London. Please come up and join us. And he's going to be doing a fireside chat with Navin Gupta, Managing Director, Southeast Asia and MENA from Ripple. I think there's some pretty interesting things that we're going to hear about. Come on, give him a warm welcome. There we go.
Hello. Hi. Can I please invite Navin Gupta? That's right.
That's cool. It works. Do I need
Actually, honestly, I'm pretty excited to talk about Ripple. I've been talking about this to my banking guys, and when I do presentations, I get very, very excited about Ripple. So I think it's nice to speak to one of the main mans in Ripple. So I'd like to introduce Navin Gupta. We're going to have a little chit-chat. What I really want to do is to talk about practicalities, what it's all about, how it might help or enhance maybe some of the services you're working with. So with that, please, come on, sit down.
Thank you.
Just before I start chit-chatting, I used to tell people that we've heard a lot about Bitcoin. I always think of Ripple as Bitcoin, but for adults, with adult supervision. That's why I get pretty excited about the possibility of providing a fantastic service for the banks. And hopefully, we're going to get more information from the horse's mouth. So I'd like to possibly take this opportunity to introduce yourself, tell us about what your position is.
Yep.
Go ahead.
So I'm Navin Gupta. I work with Ripple, and I manage Middle East and South Asia for them. For past 15 years, I've been in the banking industry, worked in multiple markets around the world with Citibank, HSBC. And before Ripple, I was running Uber for trucks in India. Not with Uber, but building Uber for trucks in India. So did banking, entrepreneurship, and now doing both at Ripple.
Excellent. Just a matter of interest, how many of you have heard about Ripple? Wow. Honestly, 1 year ago, most people say, what are you talking about? I don't know where you're going. But that's fantastic. That's almost like 50% of the people. Fantastic. So what I'd like to ask you, and like blockchain, it's something that people have heard a lot about. And I think maybe Ripple, people maybe don't really understand what it's about.
Sure.
So maybe you could take a little opportunity to explain what is Ripple?
Absolutely. And I'll simplify it so that we don't get into sort of buzzwords, right? How many of you here use WhatsApp?
WhatsApp.
Right? Everybody uses it, WhatsApp, right?
Yeah, WhatsApp.
So fundamentally, Ripple is what WhatsApp has done to information, Ripple is doing to payments. That means sending information from one person to another should be as simple as sending an email or sending a WhatsApp, right? So in WhatsApp, what happens today? So firstly, let's assume you want to send a WhatsApp to me, what happens? You can't send a WhatsApp to a stranger. You know that, right? So how does the WhatsApp comes to me? You have to add me to your contact list. That means you have to do some kind of an authentication for the transfer to happen. Once you send a WhatsApp to me, what do you see on the screen? Yeah. If the WhatsApp has not gone, you see a clock, right? So if your internet is not working, something's wrong with your WhatsApp, you're able to see a clock. If your message has gone, what do you see? Single tick. No, you see a single tick, right? That means you have sent the message. Navin hasn't received it yet. If I've received it, what do you see? 2 ticks. If I've read it, blue. If I'm typing back, right? So exactly the same thing we are doing in payments. And so let me explain to you what we do. So firstly, we work at the messaging layer. So that means whenever money is moving between 2 institutions, first thing that we do is we do the messaging between them to essentially make sure that the name is correct, the account number is correct, the AML checks are done. If they require the date of birth to complete the transaction, they're able to do it. They're able to know what FX rate will be applied to the transaction. They're able to know what is the sending bank fee, what is the beneficiary bank fee. That means that somebody like yourself who's sending a payment would be able to be 100% sure that your payment will go through, and you will know the net amount that will be credited to the beneficiary account in the local currency, even before a debit has happened in your bank account. Once you say, okay, I'm good to go, I accept this FX rate, or I accept the terms of this transfer, there is an instant debit, and an instant credit. If the credit fails, the debit will also fail. So that's the blockchain. The two ledgers are always synchronized. And that's what Ripple has done. It has brought the payments to the simplicity of using a WhatsApp. Now let me just explain what XRP is, because I think a lot of people get confused between what is Ripple, what is XRP. So in WhatsApp, you're able to send text, you're able to send photos, you're able to send videos, you're able to send songs, right? But the highway, the information highway that WhatsApp works, accepts all these mediums. Exactly the same way, what Ripple has done is we have built a payments highway on which the fiats can travel. That means US dollar, real, dirham, with no use of cryptocurrency can travel. So that means they can speed up in messaging and instant debit and credit. You can use any kind of digital asset. You can, tomorrow, let's assume somebody creates digital bond, digital gold, the Ripple Super Information Highway, Super Payments Highway can settle them as well. And then the third thing is we have a digital native asset, which is called as XRP, which can also travel on this highway. So what banks are buying today, what institutions are buying today are these highway, and then they choose which vehicle to drive on it. In some cases, they drive a dirham, the US dollar, GBP, or XRP, so that's the choice that they have. But the highway works irrespective of the vehicle that they choose to drive that on.
Excellent. Fantastic. I'm, as you will hopefully hear on my speech at 4 o'clock, I'm very passionate about reducing transaction cost, creating transparency, and providing that discount to the customer. And that's one of the things I got very excited about Ripple, the possibility of it replacing the traditional SWIFT, which was relatively expensive, very, very bureaucratic, used to take a long, long time. What I'd like to really find out more about, how do you see, and this is why I got excited about Ripple, sure. Really, because it's a matter of, why should people pay that 1%, 2%, I call it parasital cost? We want immediate satisfaction, we want the job done, and Ripple potentially provides that solution. So what I'd like to ask you is that from a banking view, because where I come from, how do you think, and how do you practically see a bank, and maybe you could talk about, for example, Santander and some other examples of people doing that, how can we potentially replace SWIFT, which I'm sure most of you probably will know SWIFT, and replace it with Ripple? And how transparent is it? What will happen to the APIs? What's the practicalities involved, and the advantages, and maybe some of the disadvantages?
Yeah, perfect. So let me just first tell you the benefits. So the big benefits is that you can immediately make a difference to the working capital cycle of your customer. Let's take an example of a customer like SEB. They're already doing billions of dollars of transactions on our network. So what SEB does is it has taken all its branches. So initially it has taken both Stockholm and New York and put that up on Ripple. That means today, let's assume they're doing business with a Swedish subsidiary, which was sending money to New York. Earlier, that subsidiary would essentially go to Citibank, Bank of America, or anybody to bank with. But now what they have told is, we will give you instant debit, instant credit from your account in Sweden to your account in New York, right? So a few things that are happening with this. One, as a bank, they're able to retain that business, which earlier would go to many other banks. The second thing is they're having a big impact on the working capital cycle of the customer. So imagine your buyers and suppliers can receive money 2 days early, right? And the money is error-free. If you look at Swift's published error rates, 6% of all transactions need some kind of a repair or they fail. Imagine if 6% of your emails were failing. How many of you can live with 6% of emails failing, right? And that's what's happening to our money today, that there is no transparency, there is a huge amount of friction, there is delay, and there is a cost of error that is being charged to you. So that's one side. The second side is the cost of liquidity. So there is about $23 trillion that is stuck, pre-funded in the accounts for which you have to pay for. So let's take an example, right? Whenever a payment goes through in the correspondent banking network, say for example, when you're sending money into US dollar, your bank has essentially kept, say, $50 million of balance with the bank account, with the bank in the US to essentially make those payments happen, right? Now with XRP, what happens is you are able to do on-demand funding, and this is not a theory, but it's already happening between the US and the Mexican markets. That means what you're able to do is instead of keeping pre-funded account, you fund it on as-needed basis. Instead of keeping US dollars there, you send XRP, so you convert, say, for example, dirham into XRP, and you send XRP into a Mexican market where exchange will convert it back into pesos and will pay out. And the whole transaction, that's the travel time from UAE into the Mexican market and conversion to peso, takes 3 seconds, right? So now there is no demand, no need for you to keep large amount of money in different pockets around the world, and you are instead able to use a digital asset as XRP to be able to fund it, and you're able to do it real time and instantly. And what it means, so I just want to be very upfront with you, we are not there as yet. So there is not enough pools of liquidity operating in every market in the world, but it is deepening every day. It's becoming every day. Market makers are coming in who are able to give you a confirmed price so that you are protected from that even 3 seconds or 5-second volatility that you otherwise may experience.
So do you actually have a product that can replace the SWIFT system with the Ripple system?
So all our customers today, so for example, I don't know how many of you have heard Anna Botten. If you read the FT and you Google Anna Botten, who's the chairwoman of Santander,
Yeah.
she mentioned that she has already launched on the back of Ripple services in 4 markets. That means UK, Poland, Brazil, and Spain. And 50% of all retail volumes of Santander goes on the Ripple platform. It's live, you can experience it today. And they tested us for 2 years. For 2 years, they made sure that every part of Ripple solution was compliant, was as effective as we are saying, and after that, they've essentially put a big, large bet on Ripple to be able to move their infrastructure. And yes, in all those 50% of the transactions, they have replaced SWIFT because that's what was happening earlier.
Excellent. Yes, I was aware that Santander were doing some private testing internally for using Ripple, and then now they've been public, which
That's
is
right.
fantastic.
And it was important enough for Anna Botten to herself talk about it. So you can gauge their interest levels.
And I understand actually the word Ripple comes from the fact that the blockchains get rippled across. Is that the general idea of the Ripple taking place?
Yeah, I think general idea is that the ledgers are always in sync. So whatever is the state of the ledger here, the mirror image essentially will exist on the other side. And there could be 100 banks in the middle,
Right.
there could be 100 institutions in the middle. All of them, the ledgers will essentially be mirrored. If, say, let's assume the 57th ledger fails, the debit or the credit fails, it will fail for everybody. That means you take out settlement risk out of the system.
And looking at our audience, predominantly, I think the majority of people are either in banking or fintech or regulatory. What services do you think Ripple? I think you've got a number of different services that might be relevant to the audience here.
Yeah. So firstly, you really have to think what kind of customer experience you want to deliver to your customer in terms of remittances,
Best.
right? So that's the sort of the base side. It may be your retail customers, it could be your corporate customers. But there are lots of other things that can be built on it. So for example, purpose-based remittances. Let's assume, Farshad, you wanted to pay your bill in the UK and you want to pay exact amount to the property department or the tax department. There is no other system which can guarantee that you would be able to pay £10,381.20. Only Ripple can do it, right? So there are a lot of other use cases that are possible which depend upon your imagination, and I think it's a great platform to build. The other platform that you can build upon is the XRP ledger. So again, today it's primarily, as the use case is remittances, but at the same time you can think about it and there'll be lots of options for you to then build on the top of it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I just recently got very frustrated. I was transferring some money for selling some stock from Bahrain to my Noor bank, and it took 2 to 3 days of working days to take place. Or if I transfer some money from Noor, why is it, this should not be taking this long? And there should not be these sort of necessarily overheads associated with it.
I agree with you.
Because the world is moving into, it's all about efficiency, reducing cost, passing that on to the customer, and therefore we can compete.
Yeah. So the simple thing is we have been using a 50-year-old technology, right? And we have got accustomed to it, and hence, but now the new race car is here, so it's for the bankers to adopt it and the customers to adopt it, and this train is moving very fast.
Now, to be fair, there are other competitors. Maybe you could talk about what the other competitors are on the market as well, to be fair.
So really, to be honest, our biggest competitor today, and I'm not trying to be arrogant, is our own imagination in terms of what can be built on the top of it, right? So there are a number of use cases a lot of our partner banks are trying. A lot of our MSBs or PSP, payment service providers, are trying, and also cryptocurrency exchanges are trying. So firstly, our own imagination in terms of what products and services that we want to bring to the customers. But there are other alternatives. So for example, somebody could do a proprietary API, right? So instead of connecting it via Ripple, you can essentially do a one-to-one connection, bespoke connection with every bank. But the reason most of the customers, so for example, if you take a rack bank or many others in this region, have moved to us because essentially banks have become a technology shop. So I used to be on the board with Mr. Narayana Murthy, and what he told me is that HSBC has more engineers than Microsoft does, right? So is HSBC a banking company or it has become an IT shop? So what has become is there has been a very huge dependency on very large number of IT teams, and sometimes it takes 6 months, 2 years to build these bespoke connections. And what Ripple does, it takes all that away, whereby one connection works with every partner around the world. The second thing that we do is we have a single legal agreement. So you sign a single legal agreement, and anybody who's Ripple enabled, you can essentially transact with them. So we take up the complexity of the legal work, we take up the complexity of the technical work, and we leave you to build your business, which should be your first interest anyway.
Excellent. I want to talk a little bit about XRP. I remember 2 years ago, I loved the idea so much. I personally invested in XRP 2 years ago. I just want to know, is anyone here invested in XRP through Bitstamp or something? Wow, so that's about maybe 1/10. What I really find it confusing, maybe you can explain, how the XRP price, which is going up and down like God knows what, sometimes on the average 5-6% a day it goes up or goes down. How that is reflected, how it is determined by the Ripple services, how they're linked.
Yeah. So I think this is a hard question to answer. So the honest answer is, was I doing anything different yesterday, what I'm doing today? The answer is no. It took us 2 years to convince Santander to essentially put half of their eggs in our basket, right? And it's a 2-year journey. It's not a journey that is won on a day-to-day basis. So the price is really determined by the demand and supply. And these are what the investors think and what news they want to build in terms of the price going up and down. The other thing that I would say is that currently the market is being driven by the retail investors. Unlike the dot-com boom, where institutional investors came in first and the retail investors follow. In the digital asset market, it's primarily being driven by the retail investors, and only now institutions are coming in. And as you would find, institutional money would come in. There would be more sophisticated instruments in terms of derivatives, futures, and there will be also deepening of liquidity. And once that happens, you would see the volatility will decrease as well.
Excellent. But my personal advice is don't put any serious money in, just put speculative money in there because it goes up and down. Like, you know what. There are 2 questions. We've got a few more minutes. First of all, I'd like to find out what Ripple is doing in this region. What partnership, what can you tell us about what's happening here?
Yeah. So firstly, Ripple is already live in this region. We have Rackbank as our customer, UAEX, ENBD, FAB, you name it, and all the big banks are talking to us, all the large payment service providers are talking to us. And as digital asset becomes regulatory approved in different markets around MENA, we are engaged with the crypto exchanges as well. The other thing is that we have got a very favorable regulatory environment. We are closely working with most of the regulators around the region for them to explain exactly what I did, for them to be able to take advantage of the underlying blockchain technology to speed up their economy. So just to give you an example, if we reduce the time it takes to settle a payment by 2 days, it automatically has a multiplier effect on the economy, which means it's like the Dell model. The more money that you move in the economy faster, the economy increases, that means the GDP expands. And when we have these conversations with central bankers, they're very excited. So lots happening in this region. This is one of the largest remitters to the world, $100 billion US, and we have receiving banks in South Asia, in Philippines, in Thailand, in Malaysia, who are working with us to be the recipient of that money.
Would you like to mention any names of companies?
I already did. This is public knowledge: FAB, ENBD, Rackbank, UAEX. These are all listed on our website. You are able to see them freely, and if you're a customer of theirs, then you will start experiencing their services soon.
Excellent. I encourage those banks, although to be fair, these banks aren't exclusively using Ripple. They're exploring the possibilities. They've probably got other alternatives that they're comparing power up, but good for them. And just sort of finishing off, sort of rounding everything off, how do you see the future and the challenges?
So I think the future is really about adoption, right? So what happens is, in some way, we suffer from the market hype, right? So like you mentioned, we are Bitcoin for adults, right? So the moment people think Bitcoin, speculative, terrorists using it, drug money using it, and what we suffer from is there are legit use cases of digital assets which will help the economies dramatically. And XRP is one of them. We are not there to replace central banks. We are not there to replace fiat currencies. What we are saying is there is an effective bridge that is required between the two, and that's a 3-second bridge or a 4-second bridge that can bring efficiencies, which can make transfers cheaper. It can make sure that the liquidity can be provided on demand. And when we explain this to central bankers, we explain to the banks that we work with, then we get that aha moment. But till we are not able to, till they haven't had an audience with them, a lot of time we essentially face a lot of resistance. And my request to everybody in this room, may it be regulators, banks, fintechs, is give us a chance and then throw us out. Don't throw us out before hearing us out.
Excellent. Okay, we've got chance for one question, and we're looking for a really sexy question here. Okay, well, gentleman over there in the middle. Do you want to wait for the microphone to come along here? Or would you like just giving your name and your organization?
Hi, Nader Shinuda, Canis Capital. Could you give shed some light on how Ripple is able to facilitate the compliance process associated with transfers? It's often that's often the cause of delay of money reaching the other end in appropriate time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good question. So the way we are able to facilitate is, when does a customer become angry? When do you become angry? You become angry when the debit has to happen to your account and there is no corresponding credit, and you keep getting asked for information, right? Say, can you give this to me? Can you give this to me? Can you give this to me? In Ripple system, this happens pre-debit. That means there is no debit that has happened on your account. Your information goes to the beneficiary bank, and the beneficiary bank says, account number is correct, name is correct, and you know what? To process this transaction, I need your date of birth. That means in a chat mode, it is able to come to you, you provide your date of birth, and then you are 100% sure that the transaction goes through. Please.
Excellent.
Conventional banking, usually it's, once you press the button and you're transferring the funds, it reaches a certain middle office where someone looks at some of the information, and perhaps it's flagged up by one of the KYC systems, and then you're asked for extra information.
Yeah.
So how could that happen prior to the money leaving in the case of Ripple?
So it does happen today. So what happens is you put your information in and you will see a round thing going, right? That it's processing your transaction. So your account has not been debited. And during that time itself, it's validating that transaction. So it happens in a few seconds, right? With the beneficiary bank. The beneficiary bank says, I cannot process this transaction before, for example, your date of birth or your company identification number. Then you have to input that. Until that time, the debit will not happen to your account. Ripple essentially enables the bank to be able to do that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We're out of time.
Awesome.
Well
Thank
done,
you very much.
Navin. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Real good.
Thank
Keep
you.
up the good work.
Yes.
Thank you for your questions. Excellent. Hopefully listen to my talk at 4 o'clock as well. Thanks a lot.
Fantastic.
Great.
Thank you.